Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed News Corner. A couple of quick updates before we get into the news. For those of you that are Patreon members, our monthly live stream featuring Steve and myself will be happening on Tuesday at around midday Australian Eastern Standard Time. So for those of you in the USA, that will be Monday evening. If you're not subscribed, go do that because the monthly live stream is a lot of fun. And our merch store is still going strong. If you're interested in getting a t-shirt like this one, either because you're interested in our merch or you just want to help support the channel, check that out via the links in the description. And now it's time for some news. This week, Intel launched the other half of their 10th generation low-power CPU series for ultra-portable laptops and small form factor systems. Codenamed Comet Lake, these chips are based on Intel's 14nm process technology and will sit alongside Ice Lake on 10 nanometers in the very same product stack. It's a bit of an unusual one for Intel. Comet Lake, like Ice Lake, will be available in U and Y series, with the U series designed for 15-watt devices and the Y series for 7-watt devices. What CPU series you will want will largely come down to whether you are more after CPU or GPU horsepower. Ice Lake includes Intel's new Gen 11 GPUs with up to 64 execution units, while Comet Lake sticks with the regular, boring and slow UHD 620 GPU. However, Comet Lake on 14 nanometers has higher CPU clocks than we've ever seen at 15 watts, and impressively, a higher core count part as well. The lineup includes 4 parts in the U series. At the bottom of the stack is a Core i3, which packs just 2 cores and 4 threads with a 2.1 GHz base clock and 4.1 GHz boost. Then we have a Core i5 and Core i7 models, both with 4 cores and 8 threads, with the Core i7 hitting as high as 4.9 GHz. Then right at the top we have the new Core i7 10710U, which brings with it 6 cores and 12 threads. Aside from the 6-core part, there hasn't been much movement as far as clock speeds are concerned. The quad-core Core i7, oh man, this is such a bad name. The quad-core Core i7 10510U, 10,000 series Intel, seriously, what are you doing? Anyway, the Core i7 10510U keeps the same 1.8 GHz base clock as the previous Core i7 8565U, but pushes the single core turbo 100 MHz higher than the fastest Whiskey Lake U series processor, now hitting 4.9 GHz. The all-core turbo is a little higher as well. We're seeing roughly the same gains with the Core i5 and Core i3 models too, where base clocks stay the same and we get small improvements to boost clocks. The 6-core part is particularly interesting in that to hit 15 watts with this many cores, Intel have had to reduce the base clock all the way down to 1.1 GHz. Despite this, they've still kept a single core turbo frequency of 4.7 GHz and an all-core of 3.9 GHz. This all-core is extremely optimistic and in real-world workloads will only hit that frequency for a short time. For example, the Core i7 8565U does hit its rated 4.1 GHz all-core frequency in a Cinebench multi-threaded run, but only for a few seconds. It then drops down to 3.1 GHz if you configure it at 25 watts, or around 2.4 GHz at 15 watts, which is obviously well below that all-core boost, although higher than the base. Given the 6-core part sees base clocks drop from as high as 1.9 GHz with the previous gen quad cores down to 1.1 GHz, we likely won't see sustained 6-core frequencies above 2 GHz. Whether this will actually deliver meaningful performance improvements over the previous quad cores remains to be seen given the tight TDP limit, but as far as Comet Lake quad cores are concerned, most of the gains will come in short burst workloads that make use of the boost clocks, while sustained performance should be roughly the same. And let's be honest, we can't use Intel's own comparison numbers because they decided to pit the 25-watt configuration of the Core i7 10710U up against a 15-watt configured Core i7 8565U, so it's a bit of a useless comparison. We also have the Y series, of course, for 7-watt devices. There's no 6-core part here, but there are a bunch of quad cores plus the dual-core Core i3 model. This is a handy improvement over Amber Lake, which only featured dual cores at 7 watts, however base clocks have been dropped as a result. There are a few other neat changes with Comet Lake. All U-series CPUs support LPDDR4X memory, with Intel backporting a new memory controller into their architecture designed for 14 nanometers. This will bring faster frequencies, up to 2933 megatransfers per second, plus lower power consumption and higher capacity support. Ice Lake still features faster memory again, but this is a good step forward. Wi-Fi 6 is also integrated, and the level of security fixes for various vulnerabilities is the same as Ice Lake. We should be seeing new laptop designs with Comet Lake during the holiday period. That will certainly go head-to-head with Ice Lake and will confuse a whole bunch of customers, given the naming schemes are different and quite confusing. I really wish Intel would focus more on getting these naming schemes down pat because it's not good at the moment at all. Anyway, initial releases will focus on the quad-core models, and that should be available around the same time as Ice Lake, while the 6-core sounds like it's coming in October. Hopefully we'll get our hands on some systems at launch to see how it stacks up to 8th gen and Ice Lake. Very interesting times ahead. At Gamescom this week, Nvidia has launched a new driver, version 436.02, which brings with it more than just the usual day one optimizations for the latest games. No, instead Nvidia has responded to some of the features AMD has introduced to their drivers recently, effectively copying what AMD has been doing, plus they have brought in some of their own stuff. The big improvements are the new ultra-low latency mode, which is equivalent to AMD's Radeon anti-lag technology. There's also a new freestyle sharpening filter in response to Radeon image sharpening. We'll have a full investigation into how that stacks up next week. On top of this, Nvidia has introduced integer scaling, which fans of retro games and pixel art games have been screaming about for years. Plus, 30-bit color support is now available in the GeForce driver as well as the Studio driver, which is a nice bonus. It's surprising to see Nvidia introduce so many features into the one driver like this without it being accompanied by a major GPU release, but a lot of these features were needed to stay competitive. Plus, we saw huge gains in Apex Legends and Forza Horizon 4 in our testing with some RTX graphics cards, which is also nice for those that play those games. AMD CEO Lisa Su has once again reiterated the company's position on Crossfire multi-GPU technology. A member of the press asked Lisa Su at the Hot Chips conference what the future of Crossfire holds. Su responded by saying, "To be honest, the software is going faster than the hardware. I would say that Crossfire isn't a significant focus." No real surprises here, given Crossfire and SLI are basically dead and have never really worked well in the first place outside a very small handful of games. A lot of this comes down to game developers shifting to newer APIs like DirectX 12, which give developers control over how to utilize multiple GPUs, and most don't bother given almost no one runs multiple GPUs anymore. Honestly, the time spent developing Crossfire technology would be better spent on something else, and it seems like AMD is in the same boat these days. Couple of ray tracing related stories now. Firstly, Minecraft is getting RTX support after Mojang cancelled their super duper graphics pack. Now, to be fair, they aren't explicitly supporting just RTX cards, they are using the standard DirectX ray tracing implementation, but that will effectively limit it to RTX cards at the moment. Minecraft is an interesting game to get ray tracing. Given its generally low graphical fidelity, it could be another Quake RTX situation where the game runs quite well. However, in less good news for owners of RTX GPUs, Assetto Corsa Competizione has cancelled support for ray tracing, citing a very high development cost for the technology that exceeds their current resources. Assetto Corsa was announced as one of the first titles to support real-time ray tracing around the launch of Nvidia's RTX GPUs, but it's been nearly a year since then without much movement. In a post to the Steam community, a developer indeed confirmed that RTX support will not be coming. Given that Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang famously stated that for developers, RTX technology just works and will be easy to integrate, it's interesting to hear from an actual game developer about how implementing ray tracing is actually a bit harder than that if you want a good optimized experience. The Assetto Corsa developers even slammed RTX, calling it a very low frame rate implementation in its current state. I've got 4 monitor stories for you this week off the back of a suite of announcements at Gamescom. Rather than going into each in detail, I'm just going to give a bit of a summary here of the best parts in case you're interested in buying a monitor in the coming months. Dell has officially launched their 55-inch Alienware OLED display for gamers. This is cool because it brings a 4K resolution at 120Hz with proper HDR support. However, it's enormous for a monitor at 55 inches. This is definitely just a TV. It's also quite ugly and very expensive. It will cost $4,000 when it goes on sale at the end of September, which is more than twice the price of a decent LG OLED TV of the same size. The Asus TUF Gaming VG35VQ is worth keeping an eye on because it's a 35-inch ultra-wide display that supports both adaptive sync and ELMB, aka backlight strobing, at the same time. Asus first introduced this on several other TUF monitors at Computex, and now they're bringing it to a 3440 by 1440 ultra-wide at 100Hz. The expected price is €600. The HP Omen X27 is a 27-inch 1440p TN monitor that runs at up to 240Hz. This sort of panel was first announced in a Lenovo display back around CES, but it's neat that it's also coming to an HP option soon. Pricing is set at $650 with a September launch date, so yeah, definitely kind of pricey for a 1440p display. Finally, we also have the Asus XG27UQ, a 4K 144Hz monitor that supports display stream compression, which allows it to run at the full resolution and refresh rate without chroma subsampling on supported GPUs like AMD's Navi line. It doesn't have the FALD backlight of the PG27UQ, and it will cost €900 when it goes on sale in the fourth quarter. Elgato, these days under the Corsair brand, has launched a new version of their popular 4K60 Pro capture card. The new version, called the 4K60 Pro Mark II, introduces the ability to capture HDR10 encoded 4K 60 FPS content. It also does 1080p at up to 240Hz and 1440p at 144Hz, and it's priced at $250, which is pretty reasonable given its capabilities. Looks like a good buy if you need a capture card with all these features. And that's it for this week's News Corner. As always, you can subscribe to get the segment in your inbox every week. Consider supporting us on Patreon or buying some merch to support the channel directly, and I'll catch you in the next one.